Lavra stepped out of the trade center with her hammer over her shoulder. She walked slowly, keeping her movements calm and visible. The Valkyrie soldiers watched her with weapons raised, but none of them fired. Elder Varnak had given his order, and even Zethel's loyalists seemed reluctant to disobey. The Elder met her halfway across the plaza, standing at the edge of the crater her hammer had created. He looked down at the cracked stone for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Your weapon did this?" he asked. "Yes. How?" "Compressed mass core. It was designed for mining on high-gravity worlds." Lavra paused. "My father built it. He always said that humans had to work harder than other species just to survive. So he made sure our tools worked harder too." Voronek nodded slowly. "I have studied your species. You come from a world that most others would consider uninhabitable. Your sun produces harmful radiation. Your planet has extreme weather, predators, diseases. And yet you not only survived, you thrived. You spread across the stars faster than any species in recorded history." "We had to," Lavra said simply. "Our home was trying to kill us. Moving outward was the only way to ensure our survival. And you brought your Deathworld tools with you." The Elder looked at the hammer again. Commander Zethel thought he was dealing with a primitive species. He did not understand that primitives do not reach the stars. Anyone who survives long enough to build starships deserves respect. Behind them, Lavra could hear the hum of approaching engines. She looked up and saw human ships descending through the dome's atmospheric barrier. They were military transports, painted in the gray and blue colors of the peacekeeping force. One of them bore the markings of a command vessel. "My people are here," she said. "I see that." Voronek turned to face the arriving ships. "I will speak with your commanders. There will need to be negotiations, apologies, and probably reparations. Commander Zethel will face consequences for his actions today." Lavra glanced toward Zethal. The commander was standing rigid among his soldiers, his face twisted with barely contained fury. He had lost, and he knew it. Everything he had tried to prove about humans had been proven wrong. "What happens to him is your business," Lavra said. "But I want something else. Name it. I want a public statement. Not just an apology, but an acknowledgement. Humans are not lesser species. We are not newcomers who should be grateful for table scraps. We are partners, equals, and anyone who treats us otherwise will learn the same lesson Zethel learned today." Voronek was quiet for a long moment. Lavra could see him weighing the request against the political costs. It was a lot to ask. The Valkyrie had built their culture around ideas of species hierarchy, with themselves at the top. Admitting that humans deserved equal standing would challenge centuries of belief, but the alternative was worse. The galaxy had seen what happened when humans were pushed too far. The crater in the plaza was proof that could not be hidden or explained away. "I will make this statement," the Elder finally said. "It will take time for our people to accept the change, but it will happen. Your species has earned its place." The first transport landed on the plaza's edge, its doors sliding open to reveal armed soldiers and medical personnel. Captain Nora West was the first one out. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, dressed in the same peacekeeping uniform Lara wore. She had been Laura's mentor years ago. Before either of them had left Earth. Nora walked across the plaza with quick, purposeful steps. She nodded at Elder Varnak as she passed him, then stopped in front of Lara. "Sergeant Bennett," she said. "You look like hell." "Thank you, Captain. It's been a long day." Nora glanced at the crater, then at the hammer on Laura's shoulder. "I heard what happened. Command is calling it reckless. And you?" "I'm calling it brilliant." The corner of Nora's mouth twitched upward. "Your father would be proud." Lavra felt something tight in her chest finally loosen. She had done what needed to be done. Her people were safe. The mission was complete. Behind her, Cole and Danny were leading the rest of the squad out of the trade center. Medical personnel rushed to meet them, checking for injuries and distributing supplies. Danny had a deep cut on his forehead that someone was already treating, but he was smiling through the pain. "We made it," he said to Laura as he passed. "I wasn't sure we would." "Neither was I," she admitted. "But humans have a habit of surviving." The evacuation proceeded quickly. The wounded were loaded onto medical transports. The healthy were assigned to security details or debriefing teams. Within an hour, the plaza was clear of human personnel except for a small diplomatic team that would remain to finalize the agreements with Elder VOR single quotes NAK. Mira stayed behind as part of that team. She embraced Laura before they parted. "You changed things today," the diplomat said. "The way the galaxy sees us. The way we see ourselves. That matters. I just did what I had to do. That's what makes it matter." Laura boarded the last transport with Nora and Cole. As the ship lifted off, she looked down through the window at the damaged plaza. Workers were already beginning to repair the cracks, but the crater remained untouched. She wondered if they would fill it in or leave it as a reminder. Keth, the Rintha merchant, was standing near the edge of the crater. He looked up at the departing ship and raised one hand in a small wave. Laura waved back. "Who's that?" Nora asked. "A friend." He recorded everything that happened and broadcast it to the galaxy. Smart. Witnesses are sometimes more powerful than weapons. He knew something was coming before it happened. He started moving away from the center of the plaza before I dropped the hammer. Laura smiled slightly. "I think he's dealt with humans before." The ship rose through the atmospheric barrier and into the dark of space. Tesseract 7 shrank below them, becoming just another gray sphere among the stars. Laura leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. Nora spoke after a while. "Command will want a full report. Every detail." "I know. And then there will be hearings. Investigations. Politicians asking you to justify every decision you made." "I know that too. Are you ready for it?" Laura thought about the question. She thought about standing in the plaza with the weight of her hammer in her hands. She thought about the look on Zethel's face when the ground shook beneath him. She thought about Danny's smile and Cole's steady calm and Myra's voice carrying across the crowd. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." The transport carried them toward the waiting fleet, leaving the mining colony behind. In the years that followed, the incident would become famous. Historians would call it the day the ground remembered and use it as an example of what happened when other species underestimated humanity. But for Laura, it was simpler than that. It was the day she proved something her father had always told her. Humans did not need to be the strongest or the smartest or the oldest. They just needed to be stubborn enough to keep standing when everyone else told them to kneel, and they needed the right tools for the job. She rested her hand on the gravity hammer beside her seat and watched the stars go by. The trade center had been built to impress visitors and close deals. Now it was a fortress. Laura's squad had spread out across the ground floor, using heavy furniture and display cases as cover. The windows were small enough to be difficult targets, but large enough to shoot through if needed. Cole returned from his search of the building with good news and bad news. 3 exits total, he reported. Main doors we came through, a loading dock in the back and an emergency hatch on the roof. The bad news is that I count at least 50 Valkyrie soldiers outside, and more are arriving every minute. Laura nodded. 50 soldiers was a lot, but the building's layout gave them advantages. The Valkyrie would have to come through narrow doorways to reach them, and that meant they could only send a few at a time. It was not a winning situation, but it was survivable. Mira was still speaking into her communicator, relaying information back and forth between them and the human fleet command. Her face was tight with concentration. The ships are 45 minutes out, she said. Fleet Command wants to know if we can hold that long. Tell them we can, Lavra said. She did not know if it was true, but there was no point in saying otherwise. Danny had found a cache of tools in a storage room. Most of them were useless for combat, but he had managed to rig a few into crude weapons. He distributed them among the squad members who had lost their guns during the capture. Not much, he admitted, but better than bare hands. You did good, Lavra told him. Stay alert and keep the back exit covered. Outside, the sounds of activity continued. Lavra could hear vehicles arriving and soldiers shouting orders. Commander Zethel was taking this personally now. He would not let them escape without a fight. A speaker crackled somewhere outside. Zethel's amplified voice echoed through the plaza. Human soldiers, you are surrounded. Your weapons are insufficient. Your reinforcements are too far away. Surrender now and I will show mercy. Continue to resist and you will all die. Lavra walked to a window and looked out. She could see Zethel standing behind a barrier of soldiers, his dented armor repaired enough to function. He was holding his own weapon now, a long energy rifle that looked expensive and deadly. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted back. Your definition of mercy needs work, Commander. We've seen how you treat prisoners. You damaged our colony, Zethel replied. You attacked our soldiers. You have broken every law of this world. You broke the laws first, Myra said, stepping up beside Lara. Her diplomatic training had given her a voice that carried well. You attacked a neutral peacekeeping force without provocation. You detained human citizens without charges. And you broadcast your crimes to the entire galaxy. That last part made Zethal pause. He had not expected anyone to mention the broadcast. His eyes scanned the crowd of soldiers and civilians that had gathered at the edges of the plaza. Keth, the Rinthai merchant, was nowhere to be seen, but his recording device had already done its work. The Galactic Arbitration Council has received full footage of your actions, Myra continued. Whatever happens here today, the truth is already known. You cannot hide it. For a moment, Lavra thought she saw doubt flicker across Zethel's face. But then his expression hardened. He was too proud to back down now. He had committed too much to this course. Then you leave me no choice, he said. Soldiers, advance. The first wave hit the main doors. Energy bolts slammed into the heavy metal, leaving glowing marks but not breaking through. Laura's squad returned fire through the small windows, forcing the attackers to take cover. Conserve ammunition, Cole ordered. Make every shot count. The attack continued for several minutes. The Valkyrie were not stupid enough to rush directly into a killing zone, but they kept up steady pressure. Each time one of Laura's people moved to a new position, enemy fire would follow them. The soldiers were learning the layout of the defense dot. Then came the second assault, this time from the loading dock at the back. Danny's warning shout was followed by the crash of doors being forced open. Lara sprinted toward the sound, her hammer ready. She arrived to find Danny and two other squad members facing 6 Valkyrie soldiers who had broken through. The aliens were tall and fast, but the narrow doorway worked against them. They could only enter 2 at a time, and Danny was making them pay for every step. Lara joined the fight. Her hammer swung in wide arcs that the Valkyrie could not predict. She was not trying to kill them if she could help it. Dead soldiers would only make things worse in the long run. But she had no problem breaking bones and shattering armor. The 6 attackers became 4, then 2, then none. The survivors retreated back through the loading dock, dragging their wounded comrades with them. Danny slumped against the wall, breathing hard. They'll try the roof next, he said. Probably, Lavra agreed. Take 2 people and secure the emergency hatch. I'll hold here. Danny nodded and moved to follow her orders. Lavra watched him go, feeling a strange mix of pride and worry. He was young and inexperienced, but he was learning fast. If they survived this day, he would become a fine soldier. The next half hour passed in a blur of small attacks and brief silences. The Valkyrie probed every entrance, tested every defense, and pulled back each time they met resistance. They were wearing down Laura's squad slowly, draining their energy and their ammunition. Mira appeared at Laura's side with an update. 20 minutes until the ships arrive. Fleet Command is asking for a landing zone. The roof hatch opens onto a flat area, Lavra said. Tell them to aim for that. Got it. Myra relayed the information, then hesitated. Lavra, there's something else. The Galactic Arbitration Council has issued a formal statement condemning the Valkyrie actions. They're demanding that Commander Zethel stand down immediately. And will he? I don't know. But someone else might. As if on cue, a new voice echoed across the plaza. This one was older and calmer than Zethel's, carrying the weight of authority. Commander Zethel, you will cease all hostile actions immediately. Lavra looked out the window and saw a new figure approaching. He was a Valkyrie, like the others, but his robes were white and silver rather than black. He walked with the careful steps of someone who had seen many years and many conflicts. Elder Vornak, Myra whispered. He's one of the highest-ranking politicians in the Dominion. I didn't expect him to get involved personally. Zethel turned to face the Elder, his expression angry and confused. You have no authority over military operations. I have authority over anything that threatens the stability of our Dominion, Vornak replied. Your actions here have done exactly that. The entire galaxy is watching us attack unarmed civilians and peacekeepers. Our reputation is being destroyed with every passing minute. They are not unarmed, Zethel spat. You saw what her weapon did. I saw a soldier defending herself after you captured her without cause. The Elder's voice hardened. Stand down, Commander. That is not a request. The plaza fell silent. Lavra watched the confrontation through the window, her hammer still gripped tightly in her hands. She did not trust the Elder any more than she trusted Zethel, but she recognized an opportunity when she saw one. She walked to the main doors and pushed them open. Elder Vornak, she called out. I am Sergeant Lara Bennett. I want to discuss terms. The Elder turned to look at her. His face was impossible to read, but his eyes held something that might have been respect. Then let us discuss them, he said, before any more damage is done to either of our peoples. Dust and debris filled the air like a thick fog. Lavra could hear screaming and shouting from every direction, but she did not let it distract her. She knew exactly where she needed to go. Her people were being held on the far side of the plaza, and every second she wasted was a second they remained in danger. She moved through the chaos like water flowing around rocks. Valkyrie soldiers stumbled past her, too dazed to recognize her. Some were trying to help their fallen comrades. Others were running toward the edges of the plaza, desperate to escape whatever force had just shaken the ground. None of them understood what had happened. None of them had ever seen a human Deathworld weapon in action before. Lavra spotted the first guard between her and her squad. He was standing barely, leaning against a cracked pillar and trying to aim his weapon at something he could not quite see through the dust. She came up behind him silently and swung her hammer in a short arc. It connected with his arm, and she heard bones break. He dropped his weapon and fell, unconscious before he hit the ground. She kept moving. 2 more guards appeared ahead of her, these ones more alert than the first. They saw her coming and raised their energy rifles. Lavra did not slow down. She dropped into a slide, letting their shots pass over her head, and came up swinging. The hammer caught the first guard in the chest and sent him flying backward. The second guard tried to retreat, but Lavra was faster. A quick strike to his legs brought him down. and a follow-up blow to his helmet put him to sleep. The dust was beginning to settle now. Lavra could see the detention area ahead, a temporary structure of metal bars and energy fields. Danny and the other prisoners were still inside, but the guards were scattered and disorganized. The shockwave had done its work well. "Lavra!" Danny's voice cut through the noise. He was gripping the bars of his cell, his face lit with hope and surprise. "What the hell was that?" "Later," she said. "Right now we need to move." The energy field controls were mounted on a post near the cells. Lavra found the main switch and pulled it down. The glowing barriers flickered and died. Danny pushed his cell door open and stumbled out, followed by the other squad members. Cole Harris, her second in command, was the last to emerge. He was a big man with a shaved head and a calm expression that never seemed to change. "Sergeant," he said, nodding at Lavra as if they were meeting in a hallway rather than escaping from an alien prison. "Nice of you to stop by." "Nice of you to keep everyone alive," she replied. "Can you walk?" "We can all walk. A few bumps and bruises, but nothing serious." Cole looked around at the chaos surrounding them. "What happened out there?" "Felt like an earthquake." Lavra held up her hammer. "I dropped this." Cole stared at the weapon for a moment, then shook his head slowly. "Your father really was a genius." "He was. Now let's go before they recover." She led them toward the eastern edge of the plaza, away from the main concentration of Valkyrie forces. The ground was covered with cracks and broken stones, making the footing treacherous. Some of the surrounding buildings had suffered damage as well. Lavra could see walls that had crumbled and roofs that had partially collapsed. They passed by groups of dazed aliens who paid them no attention. The spectators who had come to watch her humiliation were now focused entirely on their own survival. Fear was a powerful distraction. A voice called out from their left. "Lavra, this way!" Mirasolis appeared from behind a damaged statue, waving urgently. The diplomat looked disheveled but unharmed. She had a communicator pressed to her ear and was speaking rapidly between shouts. "Fleet Command is on the line," Myra said as Lavra approached. "They are sending ships, but it will be at least an hour before they arrive." "An hour is too long," Lavra said. "What about local evacuation options?" "The civilian transports are locked down. Valkyrie military has control of the landing pads." Myra paused, listening to her communicator. "Wait, there is something else happening." The Galactic Arbitration Council is receiving live footage of everything that happened in the plaza. Someone is broadcasting. Lavra looked around and spotted Keth, the Rinthai merchant, standing in a doorway nearby. He had a small device in his hands, aimed at the plaza. When he saw Lavra looking at him, he gave a small nod and a slight smile. "The galaxy will know what happened here," Keth said in his high, thin voice. The Valkyrie wanted an audience for their display of power. Now they have one. Just not the kind they expected. Lavra felt a grim satisfaction. The truth would spread faster than any lie the Valkyrie could tell. But that did not solve their immediate problem. They still needed to get off this world, and the enemy would recover soon enough. "We need a defensible position," Cole said. "Somewhere we can hold until the ships arrive." Danny pointed toward a large building on the edge of the plaza. "The trade center. It has strong walls and multiple exits. We used it for meetings with local merchants." Lavra made her decision quickly. "That's where we go." "Cole, take point. Danny, you're on rear guard. Everyone else, stay tight and keep moving." They crossed the plaza in a loose formation, stepping over debris and unconscious bodies. The trade center was about 200 meters away, but those meters felt like kilometers. Lavra kept her hammer ready, watching for any sign of organized resistance. They were halfway there when the first energy bolt flew past her head. She turned and saw Valkyrie soldiers emerging from the dust cloud behind them. These ones had recovered faster than the others, and they were angry. Their shots were wild and poorly aimed, but there were a lot of them. "Move faster," Lavra ordered. "Do not stop to fight unless you have to." They ran. More shots chased them across the broken ground. One of the squad members stumbled, and Lavra grabbed his arm, pulling him forward without slowing down. The trade center loomed ahead, its heavy doors open and waiting. They made it inside just as a concentrated volley of energy bolts struck the wall behind them. Cole slammed the doors shut, and Danny found the locking mechanism sealing them in. For a moment, everyone just breathed. They were alive. They were together. But they were also trapped. Lavra looked around the building. It was a large open space with high ceilings and multiple levels. Offices and meeting rooms lined the upper floors, accessible by stairs on both sides. There were windows, but they were small and reinforced. "Good for defense. Check for other exits," she said, "and find anything we can use as weapons. We may be here for a while." Outside, she could hear the Valkyrie forces regrouping. Commander Zethel's voice rose above the others, hoarse with rage and pain. He was giving orders, directing his soldiers to surround the building. Lara walked to a window and looked out at the damaged plaza. The cracks from her hammer's impact spread across the stone like a frozen lightning strike. At the center, where the weapon had landed, there was a small crater that glowed faintly with residual energy. She thought about what Zethel had said. Humans should kneel. Humans were nothing special. Humans did not belong among the civilized species. He had been wrong about all of it. Humans did not kneel. Humans did not surrender. And humans definitely did not drop their weapons without a reason. She gripped her hammer tightly and waited for what was coming next. The plaza was filled with noise. Hundreds of aliens had gathered to watch the spectacle that Commander Zethelal had promised them. They stood in clusters, speaking in a dozen different languages, their eyes fixed on the human woman standing alone in the center of the open space. Lavra Bennett kept her face calm and her breathing steady. She had been in bad situations before. This was just another one. Zethel stood on his platform above the crowd, his golden armor catching the artificial light from the dome overhead. He raised his long arms and the crowd fell silent. When he spoke, his voice was amplified by devices hidden in his collar. "Citizens of Tesrek 7, thank you for joining me today. I have called you here to witness something important. For too long, the humans have walked among us as if they were our equals. They have built their homes on our colony. They have traded in our markets. They have even dared to send soldiers to keep the peace, as if we needed their protection." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Lavra could see faces of many species watching her. Some looked curious. Some looked amused. A few looked worried. "Today, we remind the galaxy of the natural order," Zethel continued. "Humans are a young species. They have existed for the blink of an eye compared to the great civilizations. They have no right to stand beside us as equals. They should kneel." He pointed at Lavra. "This human will show you how. She will drop her weapon and bow before the might of the Valkyrie Dominion. And then perhaps we will allow her companions to leave this world alive." Lavra said nothing. She could feel the gravity hammer pressing against her back, its weight familiar and comforting. She looked across the crowd and spotted a face she recognized. Myra Solis stood near the edge of the plaza, her dark hair pulled back from her worried face. Mira was a human diplomat, one of the few on this world. She must have heard about the capture and rushed here. Their eyes met. Mira gave a tiny shake of her head, warning Lavra not to do anything reckless. Lavra gave no response. She had already decided what she was going to do. A different alien caught her attention. He was a Rinthai, one of the small gray-skinned traders who moved between many worlds. He stood apart from the crowd, watching with an expression that might have been concern. Lavra had seen him before in the markets. His name was Keth, and she remembered that he had always been polite to human customers. Now he was slowly stepping backward, putting distance between himself and the center of the plaza. Interesting. Perhaps he knew something the others did not. "Bring her forward," Zethel commanded. 2 Valkyrie soldiers grabbed Laura's arms and pushed her toward the platform. She walked without fighting, her boots clicking against the stone floor. When she reached the base of the platform, she stopped and looked up at the commander. "Remove your weapon," Zethel said. "Place it on the ground and kneel." Laura reached back and gripped the handle of her gravity hammer. The weapon hummed in her hand, recognizing her touch. She pulled it free from its harness and held it before her. The crowd murmured at the sight of it. To them, it probably looked crude and primitive compared to the energy weapons the Valkyrie carried. "You really do not understand what you are asking," Laura said. Her voice was calm and clear. This weapon was not built for worlds like this one. It was built for death worlds, places where the gravity is 3 times stronger than here. Places where everything is trying to kill you every moment of every day. Zethel smiled. "Humans and their stories about death worlds. You act as if surviving on a harsh planet makes you special. It only makes you stubborn and difficult." "Maybe," Laura said. "But it also made us very good at building tools that work in the worst conditions." This hammer contains a compressed mass core. When I hold it, the core stays quiet. When I let go, the core wakes up. The hammer becomes heavier than you can imagine. "Then let go," Zethel said. "I am tired of your warnings. Drop the weapon and kneel, or watch your companions die." He gestured to the side of the plaza, where Danny and the other captured soldiers were being held by armed guards. Danny was awake now, his face bruised but determined. He met Laura's eyes and gave a small nod. Whatever she decided to do, he trusted her. Laura thought about her options. She could fight, but she would be dead before she took 3 steps. She could surrender completely, but that would leave her people at the mercy of someone who clearly had none. Or she could do exactly what Zethel was asking and let him learn his mistake the hard way. "I want to make something clear," she said loudly, so the entire plaza could hear. "I am giving you one final chance to change your mind. Let me and my people leave peacefully, and nothing bad needs to happen. We will go, and you can tell whatever story you want about this day." Zethel laughed again. "You bargain like a merchant with no goods to sell. You have nothing. You are nothing. Now drop the weapon." Laura looked at Mira one more time. The diplomat had her hand pressed to her ear, speaking rapidly into a communication device. Good. Whatever happened next, someone would know the truth. She looked at Keth, the Rinthai merchant. He had moved even farther back and was now standing near a building, ready to duck inside at a moment's notice. He definitely knew something. She looked at Danny and her captured squad. They were watching her with faith in their eyes. They believed in her. They trusted her to get them out of this. Finally, she looked at Zethel. He stood above her on his platform, surrounded by his soldiers, confident in his power. He thought he understood the situation. He thought he was in control. He was wrong. "Remember that I warned you," Laura said quietly. She opened her fingers. The gravity hammer fell. For one brief moment, it seemed to hang in the air, suspended between her palm and the ground. The compressed mass core inside began to wake up, drawing power from its internal batteries. The weapon's weight increased. First it doubled. Then it tripled. Then it kept going. Laura was already moving. She had trained for this moment many times in simulations. She bent her knees and prepared her body for what was coming. The hammer hit the stone floor of the plaza. The sound was like nothing anyone there had ever heard. It was not a clang or a crash. It was a deep, terrible boom that seemed to come from the bones of the world itself. The ground did not just shake. It cracked. Lines spread outward from the point of impact like a spider's web, splitting the carefully laid stones into fragments. A shockwave rolled across the plaza. It picked up Valkyrie soldiers and threw them like toys. It knocked spectators off their feet. It shattered windows in the surrounding buildings and sent debris flying through the air. Zethel was thrown from his platform. He flew backward and slammed into a pillar with enough force to dent his golden armor. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. His eyes wide with shock and confusion, Lara rolled with the shockwave, letting it push her instead of fighting it. She came up on one knee, dust swirling around her, and reached for the hammer. The moment her fingers touched the handle, the mass core recognized her biosignature and went quiet again. The weapon became light in her grip. She stood up, hammer over her shoulder, and looked at the chaos she had created. It was time to rescue her people. The mining colony of Tesseract 7 was not a beautiful place. It was a world of gray dust and metal domes, where aliens from a dozen species came to dig valuable ore from the ground. The Valkyrie Dominion controlled this world, and they made sure everyone remembered that fact. Their tall, blue-skinned soldiers walked the streets with their heads held high, looking down at every other species they passed. Lavra Bennett had been on Tesseract 7 for 3 months. She was a sergeant in the human peacekeeping force, sent here to protect human miners and traders. At 32 years old, she had seen enough of the galaxy to know that not everyone welcomed humans. The Valkyrie especially seemed to hate the fact that humans had spread so far across the stars in such a short time. On this particular morning, Lavra led her small squad through the eastern sector of the colony. The air recyclers hummed above them, pushing breathable atmosphere through the sealed streets. Danny Cruz walked beside her, a young private who had only been off Earth for 6 months. Behind them came 4 other soldiers, all carrying standard weapons and wearing light armor. Lara carried something different. Strapped across her back was a gravity hammer. It was a large weapon with a thick handle and a heavy head that seemed too big for its size. Her father had designed it years ago, back when he worked the mines on high-gravity worlds. Most aliens who saw it thought it was primitive. They did not understand what it could do. The communicator on Laura's wrist buzzed. She stopped walking and raised her arm to listen. "Sergeant Bennett, this is Outpost 7. We have civilians reporting trouble near the water processing plant." "Sounds like some kind of fight." Lavra looked at Danny. "How far?" 10 minutes if we move fast," he said. She nodded and signaled her squad to follow. They moved through the winding streets, past shops and homes built for species much taller than humans. Everything on this world made Lavra feel small. The Valkyrie had built it that way on purpose. They reached the water processing plant and found the area quiet. Too quiet. The streets that should have been busy with workers were empty. Lavra held up her hand and her squad stopped behind her. "I do not like this," Danny whispered. Lara did not like it either. She reached back and touched the handle of her gravity hammer. The weapon hummed softly against her palm, recognizing her grip. It had been coded to her biosignature since the day her father gave it to her. The attack came without warning. Blue energy bolts flew from windows and doorways. Lavra dove behind a support pillar, pulling Danny with her. She heard her soldiers returning fire, their weapons cracking in the dusty air. "It is a trap," she shouted. "Fall back to the intersection." But falling back was not possible. More Valkyrie soldiers appeared behind them, cutting off their retreat. Lavra counted at least 30 enemies, all wearing the black armor of the Dominion military. This was not a random attack. This was planned. The fight lasted only a few minutes. Lavra took down 3 Valkyrie with her sidearm before a stun blast caught her in the shoulder. She fell to her knees, her arm going numb. Around her, she could hear her squad members falling one by one. When the shooting stopped, Lavra found herself surrounded by Valkyrie soldiers pointing weapons at her head. Danny lay unconscious a few meters away. She could see the others being dragged toward a transport vehicle. At least they were alive. A tall Valkyrie stepped forward. His armor was decorated with golden symbols that marked him as a commander. His face was long and angular, with pale eyes that showed no warmth. "I am Commander Zethal," he said. His voice was deep and filled with contempt. "You are the human sergeant." Lara said nothing. She kept her face calm even as her shoulder burned with pain. "Your species has been a problem on this world for too long," Zethal continued. "You come here with your peacekeepers and your traders, acting as if you belong among the civilized species. But you do not belong. You are newcomers. Children playing in a galaxy you do not understand." Two soldiers grabbed Laura's arms and pulled her to her feet. She did not resist. Fighting now would only get her people killed. "Take her weapons," Zethal ordered. The soldiers stripped away her sidearm, her knife, and her communicator. Then one of them reached for the gravity hammer on her back. Lara tensed. "That weapon stays with me," she said quietly. Zethal laughed. It was a cold sound without any real humor. "You think you can make demands, human? It is not a demand. It is a warning. That weapon is bonded to me. If anyone else tries to lift it, they will not be able to." One of the soldiers grabbed the hammer's handle and pulled. The weapon did not move. He pulled harder, using both hands. Still nothing. His face twisted with effort, but the hammer seemed to weigh more than a mountain. Zethal watched with narrowed eyes. "What trick is this?" "No trick," Lara said. "It is human engineering. The weapon only responds to my biosignature. Without my grip, it becomes too heavy for anyone to lift." This was true, though Lara did not explain exactly how true. The gravity hammer contained a compressed mass core. When she held it, the core stayed dormant. When she released it, the core activated and the hammer's weight increased by a factor of 100. It was designed for mining on worlds where normal tools could not function. Zethal studied the hammer with new interest. "Then you will carry it yourself. But when we reach the plaza, you will drop it. You will kneel before my people and show them that humans are nothing special. Then perhaps I will let your companions live." Lara met his eyes. "You do not want me to drop this weapon. Are you threatening me?" "I am telling you the truth. This weapon was built for worlds much harsher than this one. If I drop it here, the results will be unpleasant for everyone nearby." Zethal leaned close to her face. His breath smelled like chemicals and something sour. "I do not fear human toys, Sergeant. You will do as I command, or your people will die. It is very simple." He turned and walked toward a waiting vehicle. His soldiers pushed Lara forward, forcing her to follow. She walked without resistance, her mind already working on what would happen next. Behind her, Danny and the others were loaded into a separate transport dot as they drove through the colony. Lara watched the buildings pass by through the vehicle's narrow windows. Aliens of many species stopped to stare at the convoy. Word would spread quickly that humans had been captured. She wondered if anyone would try to help them. Probably not. The Valkyrie controlled everything on this world. Anyone who challenged them faced severe punishment. The other species had learned to keep their heads down and stay out of trouble. The vehicle stopped at the central plaza. It was a large open space surrounded by tall buildings and decorated with statues of Valkyrie heroes. Hundreds of aliens had already gathered, called here by messages from the military. They wanted an audience for whatever was about to happen. Lara was pulled from the vehicle and marched toward the center of the plaza. She could see Zethal waiting on a raised platform, ready to address the crowd. The gravity hammer hung heavy on her back, humming softly against her spine. She thought about her father. She thought about the day he gave her this weapon and explained what it could do. He had smiled and said that humans always found ways to survive, even when the universe seemed designed to kill them. That was what made them special. Laura took a deep breath and prepared herself for what was coming.